before I was a machine learning scientist, I was a teenager. I was a teenager growing up in Lagos, Nigeria, during the heady days of hip-hop, 90s hip-hop. The soundtrack of my youth was Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre, Salt and Pepper, and Jay-Z. All this on MTV during periods of intermittent power. So you'd be there watching television, rhyming along, and they would take light. They would take the power would just go out. And that's how I grew up. One particular summer, it felt like we were under siege. There was virtually no power all the time. 2 weeks into this thing, I became so bored I could pull my hair out. My older siblings had already found a solution for boredom. They would read books. But I was too cool for that. I'm not going to spend my time reading books for fun. 3 weeks into the siege with the power company, that felt like a siege, I decided eventually to go and read a book because I was the only one bored. Everybody else had something to do. The book I read was called Because I Am Involved. It was by Colonel Ojukwu on his chronicles of his experience of the Nigerian Biafran Civil War, of his involvement in that experience. That book completely changed my experience with books, and I realized that an entirely new world awaited me. All I had to do was just open a book. My high school was a 6-story building with a lot of glass for some bizarre reason, and my class was on the 4th floor. And in the mid-afternoon heat, with the windows all open, Mr. Onyeka will come into the class and will start this mandatory computer science period. Now, I totally was not interested in this computer science thing. He would go on talking about arithmetic and logic units and CPU and all these things, multiplexers, and I would just my eyes would glaze over. I was completely bored, completely uninterested, disaffected. I did just enough to pass, so I would never have to take it again. I thought that was it. I'll pass this class. I would never have to use this computer thing again. Fast forward a couple of years, I end up in the States, in Memphis, Tennessee, the home of Elvis. That's all I knew about Memphis before I got there. I was at Lemoyne Owen College, a historically black university. And they required every single incoming student to take a computer literacy class. I thought to myself, I'm back again in this computer thing. However, something magical happened. I discovered this thing called the internet, and it blew my mind. I was just like, what? I was done. I fast forward into the future. I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to age myself. This is 1996, 1997. The first thing, don't judge me, the first thing that came to my mind would be, there will be online shopping. I will shop online. And I could also get information. It completely changed my idea and my emotional relationship with the idea of a computer. That internet, the application of the internet, changed my entire relationship with something called a computer. In hindsight, I realized that what has happened is what Seymour Papert, one of the founding fathers of AI, talks about. He says, anything is inherently easy to learn as long as you can integrate it to some structures that you already have, especially if you have a positive affect with those structures. That is, you think about these things and warm and fuzzies come to your mind. So for me, it was internet, online shopping, warm and fuzzy, I'm going to be a computer scientist. That was it. I was just like, I'm going to be a computer scientist. It wasn't a big deal, and that was it. I became a computer scientist. The thing about knowledge is, it's like a building. That's how I started thinking about knowledge. And my whole question now became, all right, I'm going to be a computer scientist. How am I going to acquire the knowledge of what it takes to be a computer scientist? One of my friends, a philosopher, often says, knowledge is not infused, it is acquired. Knowledge is like a building. And the process of acquiring the knowledge, you saw those convoluted neural networks? The process of acquiring knowledge is like extending that building. The most important thing is, in that process, 2 things happen. Knowledge takes on logical form. Like we can reason, if this happens. Don't drink, don't drive, you won't go to jail. Drink, drive, jail. Logical form. The second important thing is it takes on emotional form. Don't drink, don't drive, no jail. Yay! Drink, drive, jail, bad. For knowledge to come into your life and to take hold, two things happen. Logical form, emotional form. It's very much like Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving is coming up soon. And imagine what you wanted to do was to learn to make the perfect Thanksgiving turkey. So there you are, you go to Thanksgiving turkey dinner school, and they take you into the test kitchen, and you spent the first year perfecting brining. That's all you do. Learning how to brine a turkey, the right salt, water, maybe some anise. And then when you perfect that, they tell you, all right, you're going to move on, and now you're going to be creaming cranberries. You cream the cranberries. An entire year has gone by, and you're not anywhere closer to actually making your turkey. The same goal, another scenario. This time, you actually start in someone's home, being invited to a Thanksgiving dinner. You sit at the table, take up your entire surrounding. You soak in the joy, the laughter, the warmth that occurs when you're sharing a meal with people you care about. And all the emotional effectiveness enters your system. And then they now say, after this experience, go back to the test kitchen and we'll start you at the brining station. From brining, you move on. These two scenarios both have a viable path towards the final goal. But guess which one will be more successful in the long run? A, perfecting technique without ever seeing the end goal? Or B, starting from the end goal and working your way backwards? Which one do you guys think will be the most successful? B. One of the most important things is, just like the book that reminded me about the joy of learning or made me discover the joy of reading, because I am involved. Whenever you want to learn anything, once you become personally involved, something about that whole thing changes for you. We all know that knowledge is not infused, it is acquired. Everybody knows that. The challenge of learning then becomes the process of knowledge acquisition. One of the interesting things, an enduring myth around intelligence and the nature of intelligence, is this myth of innate ability. This myth often comes up, especially when we start talking about things that tend towards the abstract. Things like computer science, things like artificial intelligence, innate ability, it comes up. There is even a school of thought that believes that only 2% of humans are even capable of acquiring the knowledge. That our brains are wired in such a way that only some special 2% of us have the literal neural capacity to acquire complex hierarchical knowledge. As a computer scientist, I would like to believe I'm special, and I'm some part of the elite 2%. However, I know that this is absolutely not true because of my own experiences. It cannot be the case because knowledge is not infused, knowledge is acquired. And most importantly, knowledge comes along with an emotional result. So just like that book I mentioned, because I am involved, once I discovered the internet and became super excited that online shopping would happen one day, no matter how silly that sounded, I was literally now involved in this thing, and I wanted to be part of whatever it is that built that future. I became involved in computer science not because I wanted to learn how to program. I became involved because I wanted to understand the fundamental frameworks that allowed inventions like this to occur so that I could manipulate it and twist it in whatever ways that I saw fit. I found something that interested me. I became involved. Somehow, I learned everything I needed to learn to build the world that I wanted to see. Along with that myth, also is this idea that they're computer science people. That some people are just born, they're poets. Some people are born, they're artists. Some people are born, they're computer science people. It's not necessarily the case. Computation is a broad thing, and it has enough room to accommodate every single person. There is enough room in computation for the poet, the writer, the musician, the fashion designer. Basically, computation applied to whatever field enhances that field and takes that field to the next level. So if you're a writer and you apply computation, you create something entirely new, perhaps algorithmic screenplays. If you're a musician and you apply computation, maybe you do auto-tune. You build things like that. And this is exactly the kinds of things that I did while I was doing my doctoral work at UC Berkeley. Because in my youth, I enjoyed hip-hop. Naturally, for me, the next thing I thought about is, I wonder if I could actually use computation to enhance my enjoyment of this art form. I particularly liked hip-hop, not necessarily for the beats. I liked it for the narrative storytelling. So driving to the lab, driving back, I would listen to Jay-Z's discography over and over and over again. And I found myself having arguments with myself about the lyrics. And at some point, I was like, why am I doing this? Why don't I just write some code and actually, end some of these arguments I keep having to myself? And I was like, ooh, I actually could write. I could write code to actually parse these lyrics. So I decided that I'm going to build this data science unit called Hippopathy, merging the two words hip-hop and empathy. The idea that if I mined enough of this code, perhaps I could put myself in the same mind space of the poet, and I could see the world through their perspective. And I thought perhaps students could actually see this as well. And if they did this, they would see that computation was not necessarily just strictly for people who thought of themselves as computer science people. That maybe I could pull in the writer, pull in the poet, and pull in the artist. We built this data science unit. We looked at it. It was fun, and we moved on. But something special happened when I did this. I discovered something I didn't think I was going to discover. I discovered that rap lyrics have a very, very similar structure to the structure of the Ifa corpus of my own native Yoruba cosmology. Without bringing computation to rap, I would never have made that discovery. These are the kinds of things that happen when computation is brought to bear on different new fields. We create an entirely new world of delights. We are here in San Francisco at the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution. It is no longer going to be good enough to say only 2% of the world are going to be computer science people. For example, we know today that AI is being used for risk assessments. And sometimes when we're building these algorithms, because we're so distant from those worlds and for those people who these algorithms impact, it doesn't even occur to us to ask certain kinds of questions. When people that our algorithms impact are designing those algorithms, they see it from a completely different point of view. Computer science is no longer going to be a nice to have. It is actually going to be a necessary. The fourth industrial revolution is either going to be the beginning of some Mad Max dystopian future, or it's going to be the beginning of a glorious era. It all depends on whether you will step in and join me in computation. I am the same person that learned credence to the idea of the myth of innate ability. Because I was disinterested, I was not involved, the assumption is, oh, she's probably one of the 98% that can't learn it. I found an application, all that changed. Guess what? I'm an AI scientist. The same person that lent credence to the myth is the same person that is disproving the very same myth. The reason why a lot of people are not choosing CS is because sometimes they have phobia or they don't see themselves as those CS-type people. Because we know that humans are inherently teachable, that knowledge is not infused, it is acquired, that happy things happen when you bring computation to bear into your own field. I ask you to dare to come into this field with me and start your own journey into computer science. Thank you.